Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got a fabulous guest. His name is Bret Davis. He's an author. And we're going to be talking about how we can reduce anxiety and build confidence. So welcome, Bret.
Thank you, Lyn. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us a little bit about your book title, Bret, and what led you to want to write it, or what's sort of been a bit of your personal experience that sort of led to you wanting to share what you want to share with the audience.
Absolutely. So the title of the book is called Bret Isms, and it's adopted, modified, and borrowed philosophies for a life with reduced anxiety and increased confidence. And the book actually started many, many years ago. I started writing the book about 20 years ago, and what led to me wanting to put this kind of these philosophies that have changed my outlook on life and helped build my confidence was really my upbringing, Lyn. So I grew up in a family. My father was a professional American football coach, right, for the international listeners. And he was an NFL coach and NFL executive. So as a child, I grew up around a lot of just great natural leaders and men and women that just kind of had an abundance of confidence. And, I think one of the things that I was lucky enough, to be blessed with was the power of observation, even as a young person. And one of the things that I noticed throughout my upbringing and even into my adulthood, when I was around really confident people with low levels of anxiety, they had different sayings and different philosophies that I could tell them, remind themselves or share with others. And I started writing this book about 20 years ago, and really have always, probably like a lot of authors, had 3 or 4 books going at once, but never really focused and finished on one in particular. But as I got older and my kids got older, I kind of got the motivation I needed when my dad passed away. He was a bit of a writer as well, but he had never completed or published any. And I thought, I'm gonna finish one, and Bret Isms was the one that was always closest to my heart, because I originally started writing it for my 2 sons when they were born. And as they got older and I was exposed to more people, and I got older, I realized how many people out there truly do suffer with different levels of anxiety and different levels of being anxious. And I thought, if I can share these philosophies and daily reminders with as many people as I can, and their quality of life increases, well, that becomes pretty motivating. So I buckled down and spent about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months finishing the book that was 20 years in the making. And it was launched early this year in 2024, and in pretty quick time hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list, and continues to remain a bestseller, and something that I didn't see coming, but certainly have been pleasantly surprised with the results of the book.
Excellent. That's lovely. And how exciting to hear that, what you've practiced in your normal daily life on the back of being able to observe what you was able to observe from these role models for yourself has now translated into success into your own life. And it sort of affirms that it does work.
Absolutely. And that part has been exciting, but, really, Lyn, the most rewarding thing, if you talk to any author, and this is something that I've learned after the fact. I remember the day that the book hit the shelves, if you will, right? And it was on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and other outlets. My wife had saw it and she was so excited and said, your book's out there, your book's out there. And I thought my initial reaction was going to be excitement. And ironically, it was a little anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because you really put yourself out there, and I shared all my kind of inner thoughts and inner secrets to success and inner secrets to what I consider a happier day-to-day existence. And kind of after that subsided, then it became really rewarding and more from the standpoint when I started getting feedbacks from folks that have read the book and they were sharing with me some of the different ways that the book had impacted their day-to-day lives. Because really, at the end of the day, the purpose of the book was not to become a bestseller, not for any kind of personal accolades or personal notoriety. The purpose of the book was if just a handful of other folks out in the world can live a happier existence, then I feel we all owe it to each other to kind of make that a goal.
Excellent. I love that, being of service and making a difference is your priority. And, the book came about because of that. And that's wonderful. I really, really love that. So in terms of how to reduce anxiety, if I've got listeners now that are listening that actually suffer with anxiety and really need some tools to build their confidence, can you give some hints and tips about what they could actually implement, that they could practically put in place for themselves?
Absolutely. And I think, Lyn, one of the first things was somebody, regardless of their level of anxiety, whether it's debilitating or just, we get, different, a lesser amount of anxiety, is to recognize that we all have anxious moments. And, being anxious is not something that's unique to any individual. I think as human beings, we all share that trait. The difference becomes when you have folks that come across like they're never anxious and have the confidence versus people that look anxious and not confident, right? They realize it and they learn to understand that emotion and how to handle it. So, a lot of times, Lyn, giving it a name and understand, okay, why am I anxious at this moment? What is it that I'm afraid is going to happen? And even mentally taking yourself down a path of how do I prepare if the worst case scenario happens, right? If a lot of people get anxious with public speaking, right? Well, what's the worst case scenario? That the 1,000 people in the audience charge the stage and attack you? Yeah, well, what's the preparation? Run off stage and find the nearest exit, get in your car and go home, right? But really, the worst case scenario is, maybe they're not going to like what I have to say, or I'm not going to be well received. Well, in that case, it's about preparation. And the book is laid out, Lyn. There's 30 chapters in the book, and that's by design. Because how I wrote the book, and the readers can do what they want with the book, but how the intention was when writing it, that each chapter is to be read a day, one chapter per day, right? It's not like a novel where you might absorb 4, 5, 6 chapters in a sitting. And the chapters take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to read. And it's laid out to you, you read that philosophy or that Bretism of the day, and you think about it and you marinate it. And the next day you read another one. And over the course of the month, people are finding, what, depending on what I'm feeling and what's leading to this anxiety, or maybe I need a boost of confidence, which Bretism is more applicable for today's need. So folks that have gotten past the initial 30 days of reading each chapter and thinking about them and letting them change their outlook on life, then I've gotten feedback where they're saying, Bret, depending on my situation for that day or what I'm feeling that day, I open the book and go to the Bretism that's going to best address my needs for that day or that moment. And in some cases, Lyn, it might be you might have to rely on 3 or 4 throughout the day. I know my
Mm.
personal experience, every day I'm probably telling myself, anywhere from 8 to 15 Bret Isms per day, depending on what situation I'm in, to get and keep myself in the right frame of mind.
And what would you say is the most common thing people get anxious about? Could you give us a practical example of any feedback you've had from people that have said, this is where I was, then after, implementing one of your Bretisms, which may be whatever you want to reiterate, this is what happened subsequently?
Yeah, so I think one of the things people get most anxious about is their health, right? I think that's a very common one, that people get anxious about their health. And, there's some Bretisms, within the book that really can help you do that, right? One of them is, the toll will always be collected. Pay it now or pay it later with interest, right? And what I talk about in that chapter, especially in regards to health, is, the more work you put in now, right? The toll being paid would be healthy choices, exercises, the meals, the vegetables, the fruits, the things we're supposed to be doing, right? And the less we do of that today, the higher the toll becomes years down the line, whether it's heart disease, diabetes, obesity, any of the things that we face. So I think that's something that causes anxiety. Another one is I feel overwhelmed, right? I have too much to do. I've got to run the kids to practice. I have to do this. My husband, my wife, whatever the case, needs me to do this, or I have a deadline at work that needs to be done, plus all my family stresses. And when I start feeling anxiety from being overwhelmed from a to-do list, right? The Bretism that I'll lean on there is, the eagle that chases 2 rabbits catches none, right? So I talk about multitasking and how really as human beings, we're not built to multitask, right? So I often remind myself, just catch your first rabbit, right? Instead of trying to catch, I call my to-do list rabbits. Everything on my to-do list is my rabbits for the day, right? So I'm like, I'm going to catch a rabbit, put it away. Catch another rabbit, put it away. And once you start seeing that and you see your to-do list shrinking, your anxiety level goes down, right? And when the anxiety goes down, your confidence goes up.
Yeah, I had a similar example that I shared with quite a few of my clients, and that is that I tell them about somebody that won multiple marathons on subsequent days over a period of time, and when he was interviewed, the interviewer said, "Well, how did you manage to keep going, and keep finding the energy and the motivation to do it?" When you was actually covering, like, I don't know, something like 300 miles in total or whatever it was. And he said, well, I wasn't thinking I've got 300 miles to run. I was just thinking I've got to run the next mile.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And, there's something I was once asked, I go to the gym every day and or at least do some sort of physical activity every day. And somebody once asked me, do you ever feel like not doing it? And I said, yes, every day. Right. I feel like not doing it. But again, I'd rather pay the smaller toll now than the greater toll down the ride. Or as you said, when it comes to the to-do list, if you look at it in smaller chunks, it's certainly less daunting a task.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. And I tend to think as well that some people have got, I suppose, judgments around admitting any sort of anxiety, or what we quite openly talk about now, mental health issues. And mental health issues, I think we can all say, like you said, around anxiety, we can all put our hand up and say at some point in our lives, we've suffered with anxiety, and therefore, in that sense, we've all suffered with mental health issues, and there doesn't need to be a label attached to that. It's just that some people have naturally coped with it, right, probably since birth. Some people have learned to cope with it through finding, like yourself, somebody that's written a book about their own experiences that have helped them cope with that issue. And other people probably never realize that they've got ways that they can cope or manage their own anxiety.
Yeah, and there's I'm going to talk a little about two of the different chapters in the book. I have one chapter that's entitled "Everybody's Insecure," right? So again, all these insecurities and anxieties and things that we have, we tend to think make us unique and special, and we're the only ones with it, or a mental health issues. Now, obviously, there's different degrees to how everybody handles their insecurities, their anxiety, their mental health challenges, for sure. But I think, I've learned just through, being around young adults and even, older adults, when people start to realize, hey, other people share insecurities as well, it makes you feel better about where you're at. And there's also a chapter in the book that talks about, Lyn, when we leave the house, right, we think people are looking at us, people are noting us, people are commenting on us. And I talk about in the book, if we realized how little people paid attention to us or thought about us, we would be devastated, right?
Yeah.
Because we think we're the center of everybody else's world. I talk about, people say to me, you think the world revolves around you. Well, I do, right? Not in an obnoxious way, but everybody's world revolves around them, right?
Yes.
And I talk about some funny stories and some, kind of experiments I've done over the years to prove my point to others that really people don't notice you, and it's okay to just go through your day and go through your life being true to who you are and being true to the things that you believe and how you want to present yourself, because that's going to help ultimately give you the inner happiness and inner confidence that you need. But you're absolutely right on all those points.
Yeah. And I think, for me, I realized my inner self-talk when I met new people was first and foremost around, I wonder what they really think of me. And
Sure.
I have to sort of change that to a more empowering question, because they've probably got similar questions going on in their heads when they're meeting you for the first time.
Yeah. And again, I hope I don't give away the whole book and some of your listeners actually check it out. But, there's a chapter in there that is entitled, "Of Course I Love Myself. If I didn't, I would change." Right. And again, it comes across very egotistical, but the point of that chapter is teaching people, as you were kind of alluding to there, Lyn, we get so caught up in what everybody else is thinking of us and their opinions of us, when really the focus should be, am I proud of who I've become? Or am I proud of where I am in my journey? Because I don't think any of us ever kind of reach the pinnacle of the person we want to become. But I think all of us are trying to get, 1 mile closer, if you will, to use your earlier story, to the finish line of the person that we want to become. And when you're true to yourself and you realize that regardless whether you're 8 or 80, you can change your outlook on life and you can change how you're perceived by others. And to me, to really give my all to others and give as much love as I can to all those around me and all those I come in contact with, I have to first love who I am. And I have to first be proud of where I am on my journey. So, we talk about that a lot in the book as well.
So for somebody that might be listening to this and thinking that, well, how do I get to the stage where I can be proud of who I am and love myself, and they struggle with that, do you have any exercises or Bret Isms around how they can overcome that?
Absolutely. I think it begins with being truthful to yourself, right? That inner voice. So I do a lot of quiet time, right? I hesitate to call it meditation because your listeners that truly meditate would say, Bret, you don't meditate, right? But I spend a lot of time sitting in silence. I spend a lot of time when I'm walking or I'm in the gym or something, I don't have headphones on. I listen to that inner voice. And once you become comfortable with that inner voice and you listen to it, then you can start to kind of turn the page in that self-improvement to self-love, right? And I think, Lyn, a lot of it starts with being honest with yourself and making a list. Okay, what is it that you do or think that you're not proud of, and what can you do to change it? You can ask for friends and family for feedback. Is there anything about my personality or quirks that you guys maybe aren't crazy about? And that can help you start. Now, you may get feedback there and you may say, they don't like this about me, but I do like this about me, so I'm not going to change. Me personally, if I were to ask that question to my friends and family, they would say that, sometimes I'm a little bit too honest and too candid. But that's something that I really appreciate about myself and something that I'm proud of, that I can share with people my honesty, when it's meant in a loving, constructive way, obviously. But I think that's where it starts. The being honest with yourself, and one of the things that I've seen since I've published a book, or feedback I've gotten, a lot of it comes around focusing on the positive, right, around you. And when you train your brain to see the positive in almost every situation, you start to exude positivity. And everybody loves being around positive people. And one of the tricks that I write about in the book, I hesitate calling it a trick, but it is maybe a shortcut, if you will, is a reminder, as I tell people, when you look at a rose bush, focus on the flowers, not the thorns, right? Because you can give me almost any situation in the world, and I will teach you how to focus on the positive. And once people start focusing and feeding their inner voice with positivity, they like themselves more, because, again, as I said earlier, people like positive people more than negative people. Well, if your inner thoughts are negative, it's hard to love yourself. When your inner thoughts become positive, it's easier to love yourself and easier for others to love you.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree. And I feel that some people, are their own worst critics, aren't they, when it comes to self-love? And, it's sad that we've been brought up, with the pressures of social media and governments and even religions that keep the masses down to some degree and keep us fearful.
For sure. I mean, that was really well said. When you look at, again, some of the organized religions, especially the social media in today's day and age, and our own inner voice, it really is easy to kind of get down on yourself. And one of the things that I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on from the book is from our past. So we often have a hard time not to stop beating ourselves up for mistakes we made in the past or a path not taken. So there's a chapter in the book dedicated to this, and it's called "You Can't Trip Over What's Behind You." Right? So I talk about how to forgive yourself, because we've all of us have done things that or treated somebody in a way we wish we hadn't, or we've made decisions that we wish we hadn't, or we took a left when we wish we would have taken a right. And we get so caught up in not only beating ourselves up over mistakes we've made in the past. To your point, we have all these external influences telling us that we're not worthy as well, and it become overwhelming. So I think, the way you said that, Lyn, and just recognize these external forces don't hold any power with who I am. And the power lies within myself and my inner voice to not only create a better, positive existence for myself, but hopefully share that positivity with those around us.
Absolutely. So, Bret, what is the best way our listeners can find out more about you and your book? What's the best way of them connecting with you?
Yeah, they can do it one of two ways. The website is bretisms.com. That's BRETISMS. It's Bret with one T, bretisms.com. They can contact me through the website, or they can email me at bretisms@gmail.com. Either way, I've gotten a lot of great feedback from folks, or if somebody just needs to learn more or has a specific question about the book, I always love hearing and interacting with folks that have been kind enough to pick up a book and a copy of the book and read it.
Excellent. And any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share that you would like to leave our listeners with before we wrap up the episode?
Absolutely, Lyn. I'll leave them with one of my favorite Bretisms, and it's that which we tolerate, we allow to repeat. And I think that's very helpful with when you talk about, we talked a lot about, the inner voice and our own self-motivation, but it also comes from, we need to learn not to tolerate negativity or tolerate other people treating us or talking to us a certain way. And when we do tolerate it, it repeats itself. And when you get the confidence to stop tolerating bad behavior or negative influences on your life, they don't repeat, and you have a better go forward plan.
Oh, I so love that, because it took me a while to sort of learn to put healthy boundaries in place in terms of way I've handled some of my friendships and relationships in my life. And I think we can sometimes fall into the trap of thinking we're being the bigger person by being more forgiving, but actually what we're doing, like you say, is tolerating behavior we shouldn't be tolerating.
Sure. And you can forgive. I forgive all the time. I just don't tolerate it anymore.
Yes.
And like you, and I think all of us, Lyn, we've all had to grow through that maturity of setting boundaries and how we allow others to treat us. So, yeah.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, Bret. I'm sure we could talk for hours on this particular topic, but I've really loved, some of the tips you've shared around reducing anxiety and building confidence. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me today and sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure. And as a fan of Hearts Entwined, I'm truly honored that you had me as a guest. So thank you as well.
So listeners, it just leaves me to say that true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.